What's up guys, Mike here, and today we're going to talk about Paul George because the Thunder got knocked out of the playoffs and I believe that Paul George is gone. I'm also pretty sure I'm not the only one who thinks that. But if you're still not convinced, first we're going to talk about why Paul George is gone and what went wrong with the Thunder, and then I'm going to tell you the perfect team that Paul George could go to that will win him championships. So enough of this, let's just get started. When the Thunder formed their big three of Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony this summer, many people had very high expectations. Combined with Steven Adams, this looked like a roster that had the potential to reach the Western Conference Finals, but from the beginning, there were obvious questions in place. OKC was definitely taking a risk when they put three alpha dogs on the same roster, and it has to be said, we just did not know if Russ was going to be able to play team basketball after his triple-double MVP season. And unfortunately, when looking at this entire situation, it is clear that the Thunder were a disappointment. Before the season began, Vegas set the Thunder's win line at 52.5 games. OKC failed to reach that mark, winning only 48. This wasn't too big of a red flag though, because obviously the team was going to need some time to adjust. However, there are two massive red flags that to me prove this team is just not going to work. The first is of course the fact that they lost in the first round of the playoffs to a Jazz team led by a rookie who averaged 28.5 points per game on them. There was absolutely no reason that this veteran Thunder team should have lost, and Russ and Melo in particular underperformed. And yeah, Russ had some monster games stat-wise, but the man shot the ball 27 times a game and shot under 40% for the series. I don't care how big of a Russell Westbrook fan you might be, there is no way you are going to convince me that shooting that much as a point guard does not have a horribly negative effect on your team. Meanwhile, yes, Paul George had a terrible game 6, but if we throw that game out of the window, in the first 5 games of the series, he averaged 28.6 points per game while shooting 45% from the field. He also had a very solid true shooting percentage and shot 41% from 3, and to me, it's clear that PG has the potential to be an awesome second or third best player on a championship contender. The obvious problem for him is that that is not going to happen if his point guard is shooting the ball that much, and he knows that. As for the second red flag, his name is Carmelo Anthony. I mean, I don't even think we need to go this far into this. This year, Melo averaged 16.2 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and shot 40% from the field. He had a 12.7 PER, which was the lowest in his career by far. And in the playoffs, he averaged 11.8 points per game and shot 38% from the field. Again, I don't care if you're the biggest Melo fan in the world, it's pretty apparent that this man is washed up, which is a very big problem because even though there was a report recently that the Thunder are going to look to part ways with Melo, he still has a no trade clause and has a player option for next year worth almost $28 million. He is not declining that player option, and it's very doubtful that he's going to accept a trade to a team like the Kings, which means $28 million of the Thunder's cap space next year will be used by a man who averaged less than 12 points per game in the playoffs. So, looking at those two red flags, that's why when asked about his free agency, Paul George did not commit to the Thunder. He said, "I would love to remain with the Thunder, but that's what the summer is for. We'll address that in the summer," which sounds a little promising, but it is very clear to those that know Paul George that he always says the right thing. And if we're being honest, we've heard this time and time again from star players who leave their teams just months later, which leads us to the biggest proof we have right now that Paul George is leaving. Other than the fact that his team underachieved and that Melo is going to be taking up about a fourth of their cap space, the biggest proof we have comes from the words of ESPN's Ryan Russillo, who has said, "Today is the first time I've heard from anybody that I trust that George is gone, so I'm sharing that now. I don't know where, it was a he's gone deal. I'm skeptical of sharing it, and I'm just doing it because all of us watching the press conference were like, why would you even come back to this thing? I was like, well, where is he going? The person was like, all we know is that he is gone. So yeah, based on everything I just said, including an inside report from ESPN, I think Paul George is gone. I just can't see him resigning, especially with the whole Melo thing. And so of course, the obvious question becomes, if Paul Paul George is leaving, where is he going? And the answer to that question seems obvious, as the Lakers have been the one team that really everyone assumes PG is going to go to. And listen, I get it. Los Angeles has the cap space to not only sign one star like Paul George, they can go for multiple guys. They can go for LeBron, they can go for DeMarcus, they can try and trade for Kawhi. They have a ton of options. And even if Paul George does not end up pairing with another star, maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he's going to be happy as the face of the Los Angeles Lakers, which sounds pretty cool to me. I would completely understand if that's what he wants, if he wants to return home, if he wants to buy into that pitch. With that said though, I personally would love if Paul George made the decision to play for a championship. Sure, if the Lakers do end up pairing him with a star or two, yeah, they could be a super team. There's a lot of ifs there though. Right now in the NBA, there are also a few teams that could possibly get him that goal. Unfortunately, most of them are a stretch, because a team like the Pelicans would probably have to get rid of Boogie, and a team like the Rockets would have to move a lot of contracts, and maybe LeBron is going there, who knows. But speaking of teams that LeBron might go to, let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, some people have been skeptical about whether or not LeBron would work well with Ben Simmons because they have similar games. But do you know who would fit that roster perfectly? A man by the name of Paul George. I mean, just think about it. Paul George is in his prime right now and will still be an all-star level player for probably the entirety of his next contract. And it's also pretty obvious that LeBron is going to take a decent amount of time with his decision. So Paul George can really choose to play for a team like the Sixers if he wants to. And from Philadelphia's perspective, you're capitalizing on grabbing an all-star level player at the perfect time, because Philly is going to have the cap space if they want it. And if they can get Paul George, why wouldn't they? Already, as we've seen, their roster is capable of big things with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Dario Saric, and maybe Markelle Fultz. That remains to be seen. The fact of the matter is, they probably have the best young core in the NBA, and Paul George can make them even better. Because sure, while Robert Covington has been a good player for them, they can certainly upgrade that spot. Paul George is basically the super version of Robert Covington. PG knocks down threes, he plays elite defense, he can get to the basket and score in one-on-one situations. He's a man who can join Philly's roster and basically not change anything while also upgrading everything. Seems pretty ideal to me. And so thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I really hope Paul George goes to the Sixers. I think that team would be so sick. Ben Simmons, Embiid, Dario Saric all getting 1 year better. Markelle Fultz hopefully becoming a good NBA player. And then a proven all-star in Paul George. That roster would be insane. Anyway, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. I do videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around 6 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much for supporting. You're awesome. We all know it. And as always, have an awesome day and cue that music.